Hello and welcome to Season 5, Episode 18 of Logicast, the AWS News podcast brought to you by Logicata. I'm Carl Robertson, CEO and co-founder of Logicata, and I'm joined today, as many of you will have come to expect, by Principal Cloud Engineer John Goodall. How are you doing today, John?
I'm well. You'll probably see me spamming the mute button on and off because I think my neighbour is having their skip picked up right now. So whilst that's happening, I'm going to mute myself a lot whilst we're doing this.
Have you been a good neighbour and put rubbish of your own in their skip? That tends to happen in British neighbourhoods, doesn't it? When people have skips, other people's rubbish end up in them.
Yeah, no, I haven't because I'm not that sort of person.
Have you seen anyone else putting rubbish in the neighbour's skip that shouldn't have been?
They're not next door to me. They're kind of a little bit further down the close, or cul-de-sac, to use a French term. So they're a little bit further down the way. So no, I haven't really, but I don't really pay attention that far down because I'm kind of quite close to the end of the close, and they're all the way in the corner. So I don't know. I've been watching their skip because I'm not a skip twitcher.
Well, it's a long way for you to walk with your rubbish as well. You might get spotted by other neighbours and reported if that sort of neighbourhood watch goes on in your neighbourhood.
To the skip police.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on from that conversation about skips and let's introduce our guest for today. We're delighted to be joined by Mohammed Fahid. How are you doing today, Mohammed?
Hey, thank Carl and John for inviting me. Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Tell us a little bit about what you do for a living.
Okay, so I am a head of SRE in a healthcare industry with over 8 year of experience in DevOps, platform engineering. I have been working with different AWS and on-premises projects, and currently I am evolving my knowledge, my interest in AI system, how AI is working, and I just passed my AWS cloud practitioner and also AWS AI practitioner certification. So yeah, I came across a different episode from your previous podcast, and so it's great to be here with you guys. So I'm excited to be here.
Cool. Congratulations on passing your first couple of certifications. Have you got any others on the aspirational roadmap that you'd like to achieve?
Yeah, actually, I have also on hit list is AWS AWS DevOps Professional, and I am also working on Kubernetes. So yeah, Kubernetes is also CKA certification that I am aiming for.
Cool.
I've got to renew my DevOps this year. I got the email a few weeks ago saying, by the way, it expires in 3 months because mine runs out. I think early July, I want to say, maybe June. I don't remember. I think it's July. So I probably need to get on and do that.
And do you lose any other certifications if that one lapses? Do you lose your developer associate if that one?
Yeah, I lose the dev associate as well if that one lapses.
Yeah. Well, then hopefully you'll get renewed in the community builder program and you'll get your exam voucher. So
I don't know if I used it this year. I think I did. I used last cycle's one. I don't know if I used the user group one because we get one for the UGs as well. I don't know if I used that because I only did one exam last year, was the SA Pro.
No, I definitely used my community builder one, but I only did the one exam myself. But so Mohammed, you said you're head of SRE. Are you in terms of AI tooling? Are you doing much yet with any of the AWS or third-party AI tools in your role?
Yeah, I have to work with AWS and also some open source tools. Yeah, currently I work with AWS Bedrock and AWS SageMaker for developing a ML model. So yeah, on the other hand, I have built some RAG implementation, and also in my organization we have MCP servers which are integrated with the ChatGPT Enterprise. So yeah, I've been working with AI tool a lot of time. So yeah, it made make things very comprehensive and very easier for us. But yeah, there are some other pros and cons. Everything. There are cons like data security and integrity are the thing that we are concerned right now.
Cool. Well, I think we've got a couple of AI. We've got
It's hard not to.
More than half of our articles this week are AI focused, so we'll come on and talk about those when we get to them. But before we do, as regular listeners to the podcast will know, once a week I curate a list of AWS news that I share via my weekly AWS News Roundup newsletter, and then John shares selects a selection of the articles and shares them with our guests. So the first article that we're going to talk about this week, it's more of a feature announcement. This one, quite a brief article, but this was the announcement that AWS Identity and Access Management now provides higher maximum quotas for roles, role trust policies, instance profiles, managed policies, and identity providers. So lots of quotas have been increased. So John, what was it that caught your eye about this particular article? Have you been having quota issues in IAM?
Not recently, but in the past, yes, I've absolutely had issues with too many things attached to resources, or particularly too long policies. Now, they've not changed the policy length, they've just changed the trust policy length. And if you're writing a trust policy that's more than 4,000 characters, now you can do 8,000 characters, or 8192, then that's great for you, right? But that's a really big trust policy. Normal policies, it's quite easy to get to that kind of number, because if you're doing least privilege and you're calling out specific things that it needs to do, but it needs to do a reasonably large number of things, like a deployment user, for instance, right? I'm not going to give my deployment user administrative ** because I don't want it to be able to do **, but I am going to need it to do quite a lot of create, reads, updates, and destroys within potentially a broad range of services to support my application. And okay, if you're breaking it out into different sub applications, if you're deploying different microservices, you could be doing different deployment users for that, and that's one kind of historic way around it. But it was always a problem, because you'd end up with these massive great policies, and then you'd have to do part 1 and part 2 policies. And this is still a problem with SCP, so that's kind of why I picked this. Was one, they're not increasing the length of normal IAM policies. I think that's already been done, but they are increasing the size of trust policies, which is good. You can have more roles in your account now, which is also good. So you've gone from 5,000 to 10,000, and you'd think that's an enormous number, but enterprise scale, you can hit that kind of number really easily. Managed policies per account has gone up to 10,000. Instance profiles per account has gone up to 10,000. That makes sense, because instance profiles and roles are basically one-to-one matched, because if you want to attach it to a server, you have to make an instance profile, right? So they're one-to-one matched. Policies per role has gone up from 20 to 25. And that was the other issue that you historically had as well, right? Was if you needed very large policies, you had to split them over several policies, and then you'd run out of space to attach all of your policies. And it just became a bit of a mess. And okay, yes, these are for SMB customers. This is probably not something you need to worry about, but at enterprise scale, I've done things at enterprise scale before, and we certainly do, that can be a real issue. So this is all really good. I like all of this. The other interesting one, I mean, they're all kind of interesting if you're a bit of a nerd, I guess, is you've got...
You're a lot of a nerd.
I'm a lot of a nerd, but, hench nerd. I get to call myself occasionally. That was very distracting.
Reminds me of Dom Jolly, actually. I had a podcast with Dom Jolly. Do you remember him? Trigger Happy TV, when his phone used to ring. He had the giant Nokia phone.
Yes.
I can't talk. I'm in the library.
No, I'm on a bus. Yeah, that kind of thing. The other one that's interesting, this, if you are a mega nerd, is you've gone from 100 to 700 OIDC, OpenID Connect providers. And that's really interesting, because this was the other issue, right? Because if you needed to scale out to fan out your deployment roles, and you need to be able to connect in from several different places, because you've got code in one place or another place, or you've got third parties coming in via OIDC or whatever, then you were limited, again, arbitrarily to 100 per account, which again sounds quite a lot. And for most small and medium-sized businesses, and even lower-end enterprises, it's plenty. But now you've got 700, so odds are you're not going to hit it. And it means that these ridiculous anti-patterns of, well, we have to be able to, we log into one account and then we have to deploy to another account because we have to switch into that one because we've run out of OIDC providers, or nonsense like that, can just go away. I mean, there's reasons for that as well, right? You connect into a connections account and then you kind of hop to wherever you need to, but this just cleans things up. So it's a bit kind of a mundane, run-of-the-mill update, but it's a nice one.
Cool. What are your thoughts on this, Mohammed? Anything to add?
Yes, so yeah, I have read it. So it's a very it has a good impact because the large organization or having managing a lot of policies and role most of the time in the enterprise, we have to face this issue because the number of policies are limited. Yeah, this change is something better than previous one. So yeah, it's a good one change, and I'm sure it will help a lot of organization for managing their workloads and managing policies. So yeah, it also solve a different problem for the identity center and OIDC stuff.
So you mentioned you're in healthcare, so I guess there's some pretty big workloads there. Has any of these particular limits come to bite you previously?
Yes, a lot of time such limitations become blocker, and we have to go through some other solutions. So yeah, in healthcare, in my organization, there are a lot of huge, in enterprise, huge of people are engineers are working with AWS and the other platform. So yeah, this thing is will be easier now to manage, so that we can operate and move our operations more better than before.
Excellent. So a pretty good feature announcement there last week from AWS. Let's move on to our next article for this week. And this is an article on the AWS news blog announcing that the AWS MCP server is now generally available. So I think the AWS MCP server was announced in the reInvent keynote, perhaps into preview. So reInvent, of course, back in December last year, but it's now gone into general availability. So John, I know you or we have been using the AWS MCP server among other MCP servers. But what are your thoughts on this announcement?
Yeah, so it was inevitable that they were eventually going to go GA, right? MCP was, if you looked at it 6 months ago, the world was going MCP, right? And then it was 3 months ago, it was, no, we're not doing MCPs anymore. We're going to do A2A and APIs again. Then we're going to do CLIs again, and now we're going MCPs again. It's just the world just keeps cycling, and it's the same tech cycles over and over and over again. But sorry, I'm now getting a phone call on my phone because my phone is currently at the garage, so they're just going to have to wait.
Your phone is at the garage,
and the world's just doing these tech cycles over and over again, but much more quickly. What's interesting about this is the MCP has gone GA, which is fine. We like that. What's less fun, and they haven't mentioned this, is because there's a bunch of other MCPs that were also in preview, and they've killed a few of them. So yeah, so the pricing MCP is the pricing. I think the pricing one's still up. The documentations and the diagrams MCP, I should say, has gone. It doesn't exist anymore. And I really like Diagram MCP. Well, no, because this is a generalized one that tells your AI coding assistant about AWS and command line prompts and where to go for more information, as opposed to here's the correct service icons and how they kind of fit together and that kind of thing. And I really like the Diagrams MCP to the point where my recent talk at the London Summit a couple of weeks ago was entirely done on the Diagrams MCP, right? Kiro made those diagrams for me using that MCP, and that MCP is dead. So far as I can work out, that hasn't been consumed into this. They made a Claude skill, which kind of tells Claude how to do it, but they haven't done one for Kiro. So that's a little bit annoying. But yes, inevitable that it was going to go GA. The fact that it's gone GA means that this isn't going to get killed. It's certainly not in the immediate future, because preview stuff can be and tends to be like it's killed off, it's merged, it's moved, it's renamed, it's whatever. But the fact that this one is now kind of much more, what's the word I'm going to look for? Not robust, much more sort of more of a permanent fixture of the estate within AWS. It's a good thing. So you can start to rely on the AWS MCP much more.
Cool. Have you been doing much with MCP servers, Mohammed?
Yes, so the news AWS is launching its MCP. I guess AWS a bit late because most of the companies have launched their MCPs like 6 months or before that. So yeah, it's a good move by the AWS. But yes, MCP is the thing that is very necessary, and it is helpful in building and connectivity with the third party application or the other same across resources in AWS or any organization. So yeah.
Cool. Well, I noticed in the article it does mention that the AWS MCP server is a part of the agent toolkit for AWS. So that is a nice segue into our next article, which is the announcement of the agent toolkit for AWS, which is basically, I mean, John, you said people are going MCP, not MCP, agent to agent, etc. This almost feels like it's kind of like the end of it, MCP here with this toolkit, but obviously the toolkit does include a number of MCP servers. So yeah, it's an article, just another AWS announcement, announcing agent toolkit for AWS, help AI coding agents build effectively on AWS. So obviously if you're using Kiro, it's going to be very AWS aware, although it still gets a lot of that awareness from MCP servers. If you're using other coding assistants are available, and if you're using those, they're perhaps less AWS aware. So plugging in the agent toolkit for AWS to your coding assistants is a great way to help them understand how to actually build things on AWS from the code that you're writing with them. So what are your thoughts on this, John? Because that does kind of bleed into the previous article, but there's more to it with the agent toolkit.
Yeah, so as you say, this isn't the end of MCP because MCP is bundled with the agent toolkit, right? What agent toolkit is, it's not necessarily the end of MCP. What this is it's a packaged offering, to use a sales term that you quite like. It's a packaged offering to teach coding assistants how to best build on AWS, which is really, really important, right? And why is that really important? Well, because we spent years and years and years and years and years teaching people how to build on AWS. And some of that knowledge has been captured into the training data that LLMs have got access to and they've been trained on. Cool. And then, as you say, a lot of why Kiro is good and Claude and what have you are quite good at it is because of MCP server, so they can go and look things up, which is what we like to see. What this is doing is this is almost it's not really guardrails is the wrong term. It's you ever see the film The Matrix? It's going to be a really niche reference now. You ever see the film The Matrix where they download Kung Fu into Neo? You remember that bit? That's kind of what this is. Is sort of how I'm visualizing it for your agentic coding assistant, right? Which is really helpful because it's now going to be able to do things in a much more smart way. So it's going to be doing things like observability. It's going to be sandboxed in the way it's doing that. It's going to be doing, proper doc retrieval without you having to know about the MCP. It's just, here's the toolkit. Great. There's plugins as well, which make installing this really simple, really easy, because configuring MCPs for non-technical users is a bit of a faff. And what we've kind of seen is, and we heard a bit of noise about this a little while ago, right? Where it was, it's the death of low code, it's the death of no code because it's all agentic coding. And that hasn't happened because marketing people still don't understand enough about how to write any kind of JSON structure file to configure the MCPs in the first place. So they're going, oh, this is all rubbish. And then, engineers like us come along and go, no, you just haven't configured it right. And here's what my config looks like. So that's just witchcraft. What I'm hoping is when this gets into the wild, and okay, it went live 5 days ago now, when this really gets into the wild and gets into the hands of developers and engineers, they can then build things on top of this to sort of help people get there. And I think this is also partly a reaction to the fact that Claude Code, specifically, because I think they call out Claude in the release, seems to really like building on Vercel for some reason. And I think this might be slightly reactionary to say that, no, you can just do it directly on AWS. You don't need to give someone else money. You can give it to us.
Yeah, so it does say that with this launch that they're including more than 40 skills across infrastructure as code, storage, analytics, serverless, containers, and AI services, which of course are replacing a lot of the skills that were available on AWS Labs, according to the first paragraph of the article. Yeah, interesting stuff. What are your thoughts on this, Mohammed?
Yes, I have used Amazon Q Developer as well for helping in writing code and integrating with AWS infrastructure. So yeah, it is one of the things that will be improved by MCPs, and the costing stuff from AWS will also be improved by MCP, because using MCP we can control and check what are the under provisioned resources and what are over provisioned, so we can reduce the resources that are over provisioned to save cost and use them effectively. So yeah, there are a couple of benefits of doing this thing.
Yeah,
I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm
Sorry,
going to have to rip out my MCP config because I've got like 17 MCPs configured at this point. I'm going to have to rip a lot of that out and then replace it with the agent toolkit, because I think that's the goal. And that's certainly what I found when I discovered that the Diagrams MCP had gone away, because it points you to the GitHub repo for the agent toolkit. And I'm like, what? But, huh? And then there was a Claude skill for it. And I'm like, that's really irritating that there's not anything for Kiro in that. But maybe it's just because I wasn't looking in the right place. So maybe what I need to go and do is just start again and use this.
You just ask Kiro, which of these things can be replaced by using the agent toolkit, please, and I'm sure it'll tell you, because it's that clever. Yeah, cool. Okay, well, not the end of MCPs, but different way to access MCPs and other tools, I guess, with the agent toolkit for AWS, regardless of your chosen coding assistant platform. Go on.
Yeah. No, the point is, if you look at the quick start guide, sure my teeth are put in. At the bottom of step 3, it says that the agent discovers and uses relevant skills automatically, and that's really key, right? You don't need to know what's available. You don't need to go and configure the pricing MCP, the documentation MCP, the cloud formation MCP, the this, the that, the other. It just works it out, and that's really important because it means that you can just be correct.
Cool. Yeah, and you've got instructions there for different coding platforms: Claude Code, Codex, Kiro, other agents. It says non-specific, but I think that covers most of what people are using, at least what I'm aware people are using anyway. So yeah.
When was the last time you heard of a DeepSeek coding agent?
Yeah, maybe there is one, but no, I haven't heard anybody talking about it. So yeah. Anyway, check out the article if you want to have a play with the AWS Agent Toolkit. So let's move on to our next article for this week from that well-respected news outlet, Reuters. I'm going to have to say that every
You're
time
sticking
now.
with this, aren't you? You're sticking with this every time we find a Reuters article. Every time.
Yeah. It almost feels like sarcasm, but isn't, because we've actually agreed that it is a reputable news outlet. So, but this is an article that was actually reported on a number of news outlets last week, with Amazon saying that restoring damaged Middle East cloud operations could take or will take months. So we've spoken a couple of times on previous episodes about the Iranian drone attacks on the Middle East Amazon data centers, which I think were played down a bit initially. I think initial reports were about drones and a few sparks here and there. But then of course we had the report that Amazon had completely refunded the entire month's worth of consumption for all services in that region, which kind of led us to believe that maybe this is a bit more serious than the initial articles made out. And now we've got a statement on the 30th of April that Amazon is saying that it's going to take months to restore full operations there. So, John, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think you're correct in that it was initially downplayed to not scare the markets, which is something that publicly traded companies have to worry about. Even massive ones like Amazon are not immune to their stock prices tanking, and that because of how their compensation packages work. I know because I went through an interview process there and inevitably didn't do it. And I don't think I had to sign any sort of NDAs about that, or certainly if I did, that have expired by now. But part of their compensation package is based on the stock price, which is reasonably well known that this is a thing, right? And it's quite common for large tech companies to do that. You get a certain amount of stock options and they vest over time because it keeps people kind of engaged and attached to the business. So they're not immune to stock prices tanking. So I think, as you say, it was initially downplayed to protect the share price. But what we're seeing now is the truth of what's happening, because how long does it really take to build a data center from the ground up? Years, right? Even once you've got the building itself, doesn't take terribly long to go up if you think about it, because they're either prefab buildings or they're these warehouse style things that you get the skeleton up and then you get the walls up and they're all kind of dropped in, and you can have a decent sized building up in 6 to 9 months, which sounds like a really long time, but when you're looking at buildings that size, that's really quite quick. But then you've got power, you've got cooling, racks, stack all the servers, get all the cables run, get all the infrastructure playing nice. The power requirements are utterly insane for these sorts of places, and so on and so on and so on. And it feels like this is more than just we've got some software changes that we can make and we need to change a few bits of hardware and some generators, as a full partial rebuild of what they're going to have to do, because there was a drone and some sparks. That drone had quite a lot of explosives on it, because that's kind of the point of them. So this, it's bigger than was initially reported, I think, and it's just going to take a very long time to get everyone back up and running. And this is the point of where historically, I think both of us have been quite guilty of the whole full region outages, it'll never happen, don't worry about it. You have to worry about it now.
Absolutely, yeah. If it can happen there, it can happen anywhere. And I did notice at the end of the article, I'd mentioned that they refunded an entire month's billing, but at the end of this article, it actually states that the damage to both UAE and Bahrain has led to the suspension of billing operations in the region. So it sounds like they haven't even they haven't resumed billing there since this happened.
Well, that was really iffy with how they did it as well, because it wasn't just here's the line item and then here's the credit, because we couldn't meet our SLAs. The data was just gone. And that tells me that they didn't have it.
Yeah, challenging. This has been already going on since March. 31 services listed as disrupted as of a couple of weeks ago. So what are your thoughts on this, Mohammed?
Yeah, the Iranian drone attack are really disturbing impact on the AWS. Actually, one of our client is having data in the Bahrain and one of in the UAE region. Both of the operation was disturbed and was stopped for this specific time. And when the application is running and a lot of PIIs and sensitive data it is holding, and suddenly such attack cause a lot of disturbance. But thanks, we have finally multi-region deployments, so it took time to set up the other region, but yeah, definitely we recovered that data. And also it's not working yet, and AWS, as John mentioned, did not charge any billing for the Bahrain region. So yeah, I am experiencing these effects directly. As John said, it took time to build a data center for cooling stuff, and every operation takes time. Yeah, it makes sense that it could take several months, but we hope such thing won't happen again. But this is very alarming situation. People decided to go to multi-cloud and multi-region deployment because this thing really disturbing and impact businesses. So yeah, now the world is seeing cloud computing in different way, because the data integrity and data integrity is very important, and also safety of data is important. So yeah, it is impacting businesses.
Yeah, it's not great to hear, but interesting to hear you've got some first-hand experience of that. This should at least make the case for businesses to have data backed up to another region, if not the ability to fail over to another region, because, if you've got all of your data in a single region and something like this happens, then, doesn't really bear thinking about what impact that is going to have on your business. So, as Mohammed said, they was able to get his client back online. Took some time, but if he didn't have the data backed up to another region, he would not have been able to do that. So
this is where folk that have really strong geolocation requirements and data residency are going to start to struggle, because they're just not able to do that, right? If it's all of your data must be inside the UK, inside the US. Well, the US is reasonably big, fine. But inside the UK, we've got one region and 3 data centers, and they're all in London. So that could be a real problem. And again, this is the sort of thing where if there's one region for your, what's the word I'm looking for your political geography, let's put it that way. If there's one region within your cloud provider of choice for your political geography, you are really going to struggle, because you're not, if you have these data residency requirements, because you're not able to take advantage of that multi-region architecture.
Tapes, Iron Mountain, send them in with a big van full of tapes, drive them somewhere else.
Is Iron Mountain near Electric Mountain, which is the big power station in Wales?
I don't. Well, it's everywhere, isn't it? But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they're still going. Actually, I'm not necessarily promoting their services, obviously. But
other offsite tape-based backup solutions exist.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem quite so ridiculous now, does it? So
no, and this is the thing: is we thought it was, 5 years ago, it was complete nuts. It was a relic of a bygone era, and now maybe it's not.
But as Mohammed said, the chances of it happening again are slim, but it has happened. And therefore, if it has happened, it can happen again in this region or in other regions, other parts of the world.
Yes. Also, the one thing which is very important is the compliance and governance. As John was saying, the data residency is very important. And also, we have another issue, which is latency. If one region is down, is data is coming from the other region, latency also increases. So these are the real-time challenges that we are facing currently. And there are some thought we should go for on-prem, on data center, but it's also taking time. So the model of using multi-cloud is, although it is operational overhead, but it making sense at the current scenarios.
Of course, there are hybrid options with AWS. If you don't even need to be enterprise, I guess, because the outposts options.
No, you just need to be able to pay for them.
Yeah, exactly. But I think they now start at a single server, whereas it used to be an entire rack was the kind of minimum unit of outposts. But they've got some pretty small. I think they've got single server.
You can use some of the more modern Snowball stuff as outposts. I think there's this. Thing in the middle, and then there's blade server options and some of the smaller stuff. It doesn't have to be full racks. It's a 2U server, a 3U server. I think there's even blade level stuff that you can do now. But again, you then have to have enough of an infrastructure yourself to make use of that, because
exactly
small server rooms cost money to build.
Exactly, but it's an option if you are considering putting some things on premises and you've built a lot in AWS, is to leverage outposts as the on-prem part, so that you can still keep everything deployed as is, but make sure that you have got a local copy of it, rather than having to rewrite everything to be not AWS or other cloud provider. So
I don't know how that works in terms of the control plane availability, because the control plane is a funny one, because what we're seeing in Bahrain and UAE is service unavailability, but I don't know how the control plane's affected by that. And I don't know enough about outposts to know what's running where. It's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's an option. And as Mohammed said, multi-cloud, of course, is the other option. At least for data backup, the data, putting the data somewhere else is easy. Getting the services up and running is not quite so easy, depending on how you're running those services. But
do we think we're going to see a resurgence in people going, "Oh, we must have Kubernetes because we can run that on bare metal"?
Yeah.
God, I hope not.
Well, we'll have to wait and see, but certainly we know, just through our own customer base, that this has kind of pushed, availability higher up the agenda, because things that people never expected to happen are now starting to happen. Anyway, on that note,
I'd really like to live in a precedented time for once.
A precedented time, yeah. Yeah. These are precedented times. You don't hear people say that, do you? So yeah. Anyway, let's move along to our final article for this week. This is an article on Business Insider, quoting AWS CEO Matt Garman. Well, not necessarily quoting him, but based on an interview with Matt Garman, where he dismisses AI job loss fears, and says that Amazon plans to hire 11,000 interns in 2026. So, of course, a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt in these unprecedented times, with AI coding assistants, which we've already spoken about on this episode of the podcast. AI coding assistants and other AI assistants just making everybody much more efficient in their jobs, able to do things that they simply weren't able to do previously, or do things that they were able to do with up to 5 times more efficiency. I think I've quoted as one statistic, but potentially more.
That was from another Matt Garman interview, I think. And anecdotally, we're seeing internally 2.5, 3 times efficiency gains just from early usage.
Yeah. Well, that means we should be at least doubling that then to keep up with Amazon. So
pay me what they'd pay me, and I'll try it.
at least it's being measured. Now it can be managed, as I say.
as management types like to say, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are your thoughts on this, John? Yes, he's dismissing job loss fears after having just laid off 16,000 people, but is about to hire 11,000, maybe more junior people than the
11,000
16,000 people.
significantly less expensive people.
Yeah,
that's part of it. We're going to hire 11,000 interns and then give them AI, and they're not going to know if it's doing the right thing. So that's kind of the cynical view, right? Because the mid-senior folk that you've just laid off, I don't know what bits of the business that they came from. I don't think it was engineering. Again, anecdotally, we know it's from within communities and DevRel and other bits of the business that you won't necessarily have heard of, because that was just for the AWS side of things. But I know Amazon more broadly lost people out of the Kindle Goodreads department and the Amazon Fresh grocery thing because they got rid of that, and a few other kind of areas. So yeah, the cynic in me goes, well, you've gotten rid of 16,000 people recently and then another 16,000 people not long before that, so you've ditched 32,000 people, and then you're going to bring in 11,000 people that cost less than each of those people that you got rid of. Okay, fine, take AI out for the minute. That's reasonably normal for large American corporates. That's quite common, right? Annual redundancy cycles and all the rest of it, normal in America. At-will employment is evil, but that's kind of the ecosystem that they live in. On the AI side of things, if we put that back in, yes, it is making people more efficient. But what we're interestingly seeing is anyone, certainly in the last couple of weeks, I've noticed, and I've seen this happen to a few businesses, that says we're getting rid of X percentage of our staff because AI is making us more efficient. Their stock price tanks when they make that announcement. Cloudflare did this, and I think GitHub did this as well. Cloudflare definitely did this, was they said they're getting rid of 1,100 people or so due to AI efficiency gains. We just don't need the people anymore. And they lost 20% of their share price overnight, because what I think the market is starting to see is not AI efficiency gains means we can be more profitable. What they're seeing is we're leaning harder into this technology, therefore we don't really know what we're doing with it, or it's a smokescreen for we needed to get rid of people anyway, and now we have a reason that we think we can sell, and they're not buying that anymore. So that's really interesting. In terms of the hiring, yeah, this is a good thing, but it changes what the interns are going to have to learn, right? I came through, I don't know what your degree was, Carl. I think it was something involving French and drinking. Mine was something involving computers and drinking, right? So I came through a reasonably traditional STEM degree. I did business information systems, which basically trains you to be a business and systems analyst rather than a hardcore engineer. So those sorts of roles are still kind of safe because there was some techie stuff, some programming, lots of system design, lots of requirements gathering, modeling, kind of all the rest of it. And those skills are kind of still relevant. Cool, wonderful. It's the comp sci graduates that I worry for now, because all the people that come through programming boot camps, because you don't need to be a programmer anymore. As you say, it's either things that you couldn't do before or things that you could do, but much, much faster, right? And that's what we're seeing. Because we're a Terraform shop, we do lots of CloudFormation as well. We write lots of Python. These are all things that we can do internally, and we have been doing for a while, but we're putting the code out so much faster, it's not even funny, to the point where we're having issues with something called verification debt because you can't review it quickly enough. And that's kind of the challenge that we're starting to see. So what are these interns going to be doing? How are they going to be taught? How are they going to be trained? That's a very different sort of question. And that's something that I'd like to see an answer to. Great that they're hiring them. What skills are they being trained in? And what are the next 5 years worth of graduates who have been, doing stuff and learning Java or whatever, going to start to need to know?
What are your thoughts on this, Mohammed?
Yeah, the news is massive, like hiring 11,000 interns. But in the past week, we have seen different massive layoffs. Like Oracle did that, and recently Coinbase did that layoffs. So yeah, due to AI, layoffs are very pathetic these days, and people are losing their jobs because of AI. Yeah, definitely AI is efficient, but we have to figure out how to manage the workforce along with the AI. And hiring 11,000 interns is a massive decision. I guess a lot of people are getting internships, but yeah, what they will be being taught really matters. How they're gonna see their career path, what skills they need to know, this is very important because from the past layoffs, most of the senior resources from Microsoft, AWS also did that. Most of the senior folks are fired, they lost their jobs. So this thing need to be regulated, how AI will impact the hiring and firing process, how people, what skill people should learn now, because coding is not a problem anymore. Anyone can write the code using AI assistant agents. So yeah, we have cursor, cloud code, but the thing is that the architecture level thinking, how to making system secure, what is the problem we are solving totally matters. Hiring is good, but how they're gonna treat these interns, what is their career path totally matters.
Yeah, the other thing that is worth just picking up on is whilst the AI can code very quickly, what LLMs have a nasty habit of doing is overcomplicating things. And that's where the system thinking and the design comes in. We've seen this firsthand. We've absolutely seen this, was they absolutely love to overcomplicate things, and they'll NQ and DQ things and worry about things that happen at really big scale on something that's going to be run once an hour. Like, you don't have to worry about what the maximum possible throughput is of this particular method. It's not going to be used that much, and that's because it doesn't have the context. So it's optimizing for make it work in every scenario possible, but the result of which is you end up with 7,000 lines of code for what really is a 200 line of code thing that needed to exist, because it's gone off so far down the deep end. And that's the sort of skills that these new interns still need to be taught, which it's the sort of thing the senior engineers and what have you that have been doing this for a while have picked up naturally, as it were. You were never taught to write the minimum amount of code. I mean, probably some people were taught to write the minimum amount of code, but this is where we talk about the inherent laziness of an engineer, is if it doesn't need to do something, I'm not going to make it do the thing. And the AIs have to be guided like that, and they're still quite guilty of being too complicated for their own good.
Yeah, one thing also is the security focusing AI development. We can generate AI can generate the code, but whether it is injecting some SQL injection stuff or exposing any private keys to the public, to the internet, or on the cloud side, does it exposing the sensitive data to the internet is very important to understand the security mindset. So yeah, the usage of AI is important, but knowing how to do it, how to use AI, how to write code using AI is truly matters in this era.
Yeah, I think it's just having all of that background knowledge, isn't it? And understanding how everything fits together so that you know what has been created from your prompt by the AI coding assistant, whether that is going to meet the various different requirements that it needs to meet, not just from a functionality perspective, does it work, but is it going to meet the security, the compliance, governance requirements of the organization, and so on and so forth. You know, and I suspect your average intern probably is not even considered any of those things. So it'd be interesting to see if that's the sort of thing that they're going to be teaching them. But we don't know what they're going to be learning yet. We just know they're going to be getting hired. We do know that other organizations are blaming AI for layoffs. So it's just going to be interesting to see what happens in the job market over the next 6 to 12 months, really. That coupled with what we've spoken about before, that AI is going to get more expensive, are people going to start backing away from it when it does? You know, because at the moment it's being subsidized by funding, and you know, these things are not going to be $20 a month forever. We don't yet know where that's going to sort of end up in terms of what cost of running AI is going to be.
Something make hay, something.
Exactly, yeah. And perhaps there'll be a big rush back to hiring people when AI becomes just too expensive. I doubt that's going to be the case, but let's wait and see what happens. But on that note, we have reached the end of our time for Season 5, Episode 18 of Logicast. So if you have made it this far, thank you very much for listening. If you've enjoyed it, please give us a like, give us a follow on YouTube. Please do tell your friends. We are available to download from wherever you get your podcasts. So it just remains for me to thank you, John, for your insights as always, and to thank our guest today, Mohammed Fahid. It's been great to have you on, Mohammed, and to hear your insights, particularly your first-hand experience of the issues in Bahrain. I don't think we've mentioned it a few times, but I don't think we've had anyone who's on the podcast who's had any first-hand experience there. So it's been really great to hear your insights, Mohammed. Thank you very much for joining us. That's all for this week. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode for you.